The sponsor to me is my lifeline. It is my lifeline. I have a higher power now, which I choose to call God, but it's also my program. It's like I got an instruction manual on how to be an adult and how to live a life.
It's time for the Share Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
On today's episode of the Share Podcast, Angry Lauren No More takes us through 2 decades of relapse and recovery. For 10 years, Lauren self-medicated her anxiety and depression with marijuana and a cocktail of other illegal street drugs. Her bottom brought her to a rehab center where she is introduced to recovery and remains sober for 7 years. She gets married, has her first child, and stops going to meetings. Join us now as Lauren takes us through her horrific relapse and how she finds the instruction manual to recovery and happiness. You don't want to miss this episode.
Hey, Lauren, thanks for joining us.
Hey, O, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show today. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Had a really good day.
Excellent. You ready to get started?
I am.
Perfect. So, Lauren, let's dive right in. Tell us about how your life is today, your hobbies, what you do for a living. Take us into your normal daily routine, including recovery.
Okay, well, right now I have a 3-year-old boy, so the majority of my day is taking care of him. I did used to work all the time. Now my life is my son. And so I wake up, I get him ready for school. I do some things around the house. I'm very, very active with my sponsee and my sponsor. And I do recovery almost every day. I am the chairperson of my group. And I do service all the time. So I constantly do service. I either try to make coffee, clean up, or run a meeting. So my normal day is just, taking care of my son, trying to be present with him. I sometimes get really caught up on what he's doing, what he's not doing, and the drama around that. And I forget to be present. So that's like my battle during the day.
With or without kids, sometimes that's a battle for all of us.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about your past now. How old were you the first time you drank or used drugs? And more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and my passion really was with drugs. And the first time I smoked marijuana was amazing. It was probably one of the best experiences I have. Still had today, but I had a friend who lived in New York City, and they called people in New York City were always faster than us out in the suburbs. And I remember her saying that she started smoking pot, and I called her and I said, "Can you please bring some pot up? I need to smoke." I've never smoked before. So she came up. I was ready to do it. A lot of people don't get high the first time. I was like, let's do it. I smoked 2 joints to myself. I got so high, and I laughed harder than I ever laughed in my life. My face hurt from smiling. My stomach muscles hurt. I went to the diner in town. We have a lot of diners around here. And we ate and laughed and talked all night. And it was just, it made me feel great.
I will concur because the first time I smoked out, it was the exact same thing. It was just gut-wrenching laughter that you cannot stop laughing. You think it's the best thing. Where have you been all my life? And how do I get and where do I get some food? Because I'm starving.
Right. Exactly. And we call them disco fries. It's fries with cheese melted on it and gravy. It's like a big thing up here.
Oh my God.
So we go to the diner and we get disco fries,
Dude.
and everyone would be laughing and cackling in the diner. And I have a really devious cackle that comes out. It's like a really, really devious cackle. Drinking for me it took effort. It's like you have to drink, you have to do this. I wanted the immediate high. So if I was going to drink, I was going to do shots and things like that. So for the first time I drank, it wasn't monumentous. And my parents aren't drinkers.
Well, Lauren, it sounds like you're all warmed up here. So
I think I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn this show over to you. So, Lauren, it's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally, your journey into recovery up until today. So, Lauren, take it away.
I grew up in an amazing family, and I say that 10 years in because, when I first came around, I didn't realize that. But, my parents, they're both married, supportive of me and my sisters, just the two of us. They gave us everything we could need or want. It was a fun household. I had learning disabilities from the time they figured it out, from the time I was in nursery school. I'm not quite sure how, but they called my mom and they're like, she's not following directions. I think you should get her classified or you should get her looked at. And at this time, it was in the 70s. Having a learning disability wasn't really that common. I really feel when I go through my story that this takes me to the place where I started with my feelings of not being good enough, of being stupid, not fitting in, not ever being able to do anything good. As I got into middle school, it started to get a little weird. It started to get bad because they were taking me out and they putting me in the classroom with all these boys who were smoking pot, getting in trouble, skipping classes, things like that. And I was always up for whatever anyone had. It's something that it's like so impulsive of me, but someone would be like, you want to do this? And I'm like, let's go. I had a lot of stupid things I did. I went over to a friend's house. I was in 5th grade and I don't know what, she must have seen some stuff now in retrospect, but she was like, let's crush up mustard seeds and snort them. And I said, okay, that sounds like a great idea. So we crushed them up. I snorted them. It was like my whole head was on fire. It was crazy. But I thought it was fun, because we were laughing and being silly. I mean, I didn't tell anyone that. I've only just started talking about that experience because I was very young for me. And
wait a minute. Crushing up mustard seeds?
Yes.
Is that supposed to give you a high?
No, it doesn't give you a high. I was 8 years old, and I'm assuming now that her parents probably did coke and she saw it.
I'm wondering who comes up with a genius idea of crushing up mustard seeds.
That's not
at
genius.
8.
Trust me, not genius.
Oh,
we came up with all sorts of ideas, my girlfriends and I. After a while, we tried to smoke banana peels, all sorts of stuff like that. But I'm sure you've heard of that.
Banana peels? No.
You've never heard that?
No. Why would you smoke banana peels? Unless I'm going to get high. Why would
Well, you're supposed to get high. You're supposed to I don't know. It's ridiculous. I didn't get high, but that's who I was. I was in the point where I wanted to do something bad. Some people are just born with an addictive personality.
Yep.
And it's not my fault. I'm an addict. I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic, and it's not my fault. It's a disease. It's a disease of feeling less than and constantly wanting to feel better and not knowing how to do it. When I got into probably middle school, people started to drink, and my sister and I, both of us, were very, I don't want to say like goody two shoes, because by no means was I a goody two shoes, but with guys, I had no interest in guys until I was much older. I just wanted to have fun and be a clown. And I remember drinking. We were drinking one night. It's always the older friends. It was always my friend's older sister or older brother or something like that. So we were at a party with older kids and we were drinking, and I got drunk and probably blacked out and thought it was cool and pretended to be like falling all over the place. I don't know why I thought that was cool, because all the other people were doing it. So I think that was the first time I got drunk. I was at a high school party. I was a freshman, and I didn't have problems talking to people. I think I might have had a problem talking to boys that I liked. I just didn't know how to go about doing it. I was always friends with everyone and joking around. But when it came to liking people, that was just off in the distance for me. I wanted to concentrate on other stuff at the beginning. I got wasted at that party and I thought it was amazing. It was so much fun. Everyone was laughing and passed out all over the place. My parents had a liquor cabinet, like tiny little liquor cabinet. And I would open it up just like a lot of people. And I would take the vodka and measure the line, and I would put the water back in, and I would do shots of it until I got I would get really hot and flushed. And then I would get all giddy. And I would have my friends come over and we would do that. But as soon as it was like every weekend you were trying to get drunk, but it wasn't like I needed to get drunk. When I smoked pot for the first time, it was like my best friend. It was like, oh, this is what it's about. This is something that I can keep doing and have fun with. I don't have to drink and get sloppy and throw up. And, there was a wave in high school of drugs that came by. It was It was in the 80s, and all of a sudden there was mescaline, shrooms, acid, speed, things like that. And of course, I wanted to try everything. There was no reservation. I just didn't want to be myself. I wanted to feel crazy, and I felt good when I was feeling crazy. So I had the perfect partner, and we tried everything together, and we hung out with the wrong people. We started cutting classes, going down to the Bronx and getting weed, coming back, selling it. I didn't really sell it that much. But people, all of a sudden people were like, "Oh, Lauren, will you go get it for me?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is so cool." And it's not cool being a white girl going down to the Bronx in this area buying drugs. It was not cool at all. And after a while, the cops started going down and busting everyone that looked like they shouldn't be there. I graduated from high school and I went to college. I never had a bout with depression yet, but depression is a huge part of my story. When I got into college and was preparing to go to college, that summer after my senior year, I got so sick. It almost seemed like I had Lyme's disease or something like that. I was going doctor after doctor. I think that's when I started seeing a therapist. My mom found a therapist up there, and she came up and she talked to the therapist, and the therapist said, if she was my daughter, I would come up and take her home right away. So that's what my mom did. So I came back, and this depression kind of just fell over me like a dark cloud, and I couldn't live my life. I was like in bed constantly. Once I started feeling a little better at home, I started going out to all the local bars with all the local people. I'm very good at making friends. I love people. I found a group of friends that were drinking a lot and going to the local bars. I was 19. I did definitely drink more than a lot of other people did. I would definitely throw up or something like that, but I was not blacking out. I definitely drove. I remember driving with my one eye closed to focus on the road, which is terrible.
I remember that.
Yeah, really bad. And if I just smoked pot, nothing like that ever happened. If I drank, one drink at the end and my eyes crossed. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was like I couldn't see straight after my first martini at the end. So I had to go and do coke to level myself out. I ended up graduating from college after having another big depressive episode. Those depressive episodes shaped who I am. And the reason why I'm talking about them is because I medicated myself throughout the years with marijuana. I would smoke weed and then I would go about my day. People didn't even know I was high. I could go to work, I can drive. And when I came home from college, I looked for a job. I ended up finding something that I liked. It wasn't something amazing. I never really went for anything big because of how I felt about myself. So I always kind of went lower than I really needed. Somehow I decided that being a bartender was a great addition. And bartending was so awesome for me because I love to entertain and I was having so much, it was so much fun.
Being a bartender is fun.
Oh my God, I had the best time. I had the best time. And I have to tell you, this bar was disgusting. It was called I don't want to name it, but it was disgusting. It was like a sports bar and there was a lot of drugs there and people were handing me across the bar coke. And right before I started bartending, I ran into an old friend. We were out one night at a bar. I failed to mention this because this is a big night. I ran into a friend and she was in the backseat of the car. She's like, "You got to try this." I was like, "No, I don't snort anything. I'm totally against it. I'll only smoke pot." I really, really like that. And I took one snort and I swear it was like I was walking. It was like I was running underneath water in the bar. I took Special K and it was like, whoa, I couldn't believe the feeling. And we were laughing hysterically. And I was like, this is amazing. And once I snorted one thing, it was like, okay, well, here's coke. Try to snort that. And then I snorted coke and that was it. It was it was like my boyfriend for years. I ended up getting a job in New York City in an advertising agency. And it was awesome. It was fun. But the thing with me was going out for 2-hour martini lunches and rocking it. I loved it. I had so much fun. I was selling media or I was buying media and I had people come in and bring me out for lunch and, they turned into 2-hour martini lunches and people were doing coke and I would come back to work and it was totally fine to be like that. Towards the end, it started to get so bad. We would go for happy hour, and I would go at like 5:30 for happy hour for one drink. And then at like 6 o'clock the next morning, I'd still be in the city at an after hour party,
Ooh.
having to get ready to go to work the next day. I was living with my sister towards the end. And I remember thinking to myself, I would have like friends over all the time for partying at like 4 a.m. because the bars closed at 4. And I'd be like, this is bullshit. What am I supposed to do now? So we'd immediately find a group of friends that were hanging out after, and then after that, and after that. It was like, I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to miss out on anything. And bringing my friends back to my house, my sister waking up at 6:30 in, getting ready to go to work, and me and my friends being around the table, like all cracked out on coke. It was awful. And I pretended like she had no idea. She totally had an idea. But I acted like she had no idea, like she was crazy. The last 2 months of my downward slide, I was living by myself, no boyfriend, no job, no money. I was really, I was losing everything. And I was becoming friends with people specifically so I could get drugs. And I decided one day, I woke up in the middle of my living room floor by myself in the middle of the afternoon. And I was like, what is going on with me? And it was such a downward spiral that I kept thinking to myself, I don't want to live anymore. All I'm doing is hurting myself, and I'm so miserable, and I'm not smart, and I'm not pretty, and I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't find a job I love, and I'm never going to be successful. I was 30, and all my friends were getting married and having kids. I was actually scared to be by myself. And I drove all the way to my doctor, and I told her what was going on. It was just one of those God moments. It was enough. It was either me going and asking for help or dying. There was no other solution at that point. And she admitted me to the hospital. I didn't tell her that I was doing drugs. Like, no one knew about that. Everyone thought I was just depressed. And I went into a hospital for 10 days. And I remember the last day they came in and they said, okay, so you are going to go to a rehab. And I was, for what? I'm like, I don't have any drug problems. And they said, well, you do coke and you smoke pot and you do this and you do that. And you're trying to level yourself out and make yourself feel better. And you're just completely out of whack. And I ended up going to a rehab facility, an amazing rehab facility. It changed my life. I was ready at that point. I was done with my struggle emotionally. I was just emotionally and physically, I was like on death's doorstep. And by the time I got there, I was so beaten down and ready to feel better. I didn't care who knew where I was. If there was rumors going around, or where'd Lauren go? Because I like fell off the face of the universe. After being a month clean with no drugs and alcohol and being forced to go to AA meetings and talking about my problems, which was not something I enjoyed doing, I started to realize that I was feeling better, and I was laughing and smiling and hanging out with people. When I left, they said, you need to go to a meeting the night you leave. And they got me so scared. By the time I left that I didn't want to leave because I was in a bubble. They were making me dinner. They were transporting us from place to place. It was very cushy. And I had a great group of friends living in this beautiful house. I mean, it was like really nice rehab.
Wow.
And I went to a meeting, and I did something that I never did before. I sat in the front row. I put my hand up. I said, my name is Lauren. I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. I just got out of rehab, and I need help.
Wow.
It was one of those feelings, like another one of those feelings, like something was forcing me to be like that. And I never had a God. It was always like me, like I smoked pot, and man, it was so cool, where I would meditate. And, I got a group, I got a sponsor, and I just gave myself over. I gave my will over to AA. That was my understanding of God at the beginning. I came to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. And that was my sponsor. That was my group. So I started getting really involved, and I ended up meeting my husband. And it was like all the promises are in the big book. They talk about the things you're going to get back in life. And I got those things back really quickly. It was just like, all of a sudden, I was in my 30s. I met my husband. He was this great guy. He had recovery. I was like, okay, this is it. My life is going to be a sober woman. I'm going to marry this guy in AA, and this is going to be my life. I was doing well, but I wasn't being honest with myself. And I did all the steps. I mean, for 7 years, I got married sober. I had a child sober, and I did the steps, and I worked with different sponsors, and I was coasting. It was like 7.5 years sober. And I was thinking to myself, God, these people, they're saying the same things every time I hear them. I can't take it. I was going to the same group. The group is very incestuous. It's like a big group. Everyone was family and friends and this and that. And sometimes you get lost in the gossip and the drama. And that's a big thing with me is I need to stay away from the drama. So no place in the program for gossiping, principles before personalities. What happened was I stopped talking about what was really going on with me because my husband was in the same group. And even though we didn't go to meetings together, he was hearing all that I was saying about him. What you hear here, what you see here, please let it stay here.
Right.
That was not happening in my group. And I was
gotcha.
very uncomfortable. So when I was pregnant, I was huge. I loved being pregnant, but I stopped going to meetings. And you know what they say, you stop going to meetings. And I was messing around with medications, basically. Like I shouldn't have been taking Benadryl. I mean, sometimes you can take Benadryl, but I was taking like extra Benadryl to supplement me going to sleep at night.
Right.
I was taking, I had a really bad back for a while, and I was taking a medication that was supposed to be not addictive because they knew I was a drug addict. But, who are we to take medication like that? So I couldn't go a day without taking it. So I was taking that medication. That was not being honest. I wasn't being honest with my sponsor. I wasn't being honest with myself. And that was my decline into, I feel, my slip. My slip happened like 3 years before I picked up the drink.
Right.
It's really true. When people say, oh, it was just there and I picked it up, like I don't buy it. When I had Jackson, I ended up having a C-section, which was major abdominal surgery. And they just started pumping me with Vicodin and Percocet. And the first pill that entered my system, and I was like, whoa,
yeah,
I really missed this. I missed the feeling of just lying there and feeling like out of it. And I loved taking those pills. I'd be like, oh, Michael, my husband, I'd be like, oh, I dropped a pill. Or I was like thinking of ways to manipulate the situation so I can get more. And when I was done with the pills, I called the doctor. I was like, listen, I'm done. They're like, well, we're not giving you more. You shouldn't need any more. And I was thinking to myself, oh, man. And I was a new mom. My whole life had changed. And I ended up getting postpartum depression, was transformed myself and my life. I'm working with people that have postpartum depression now, but I had no idea that this was going to happen to me. Everything was hunky-dory. We wanted Jackson. I ended up having a big struggle with it. And then I relapsed. I was doing pills. I couldn't handle all of a sudden having my life gone,
right.
Being Lauren, who I was all of a sudden a mother
right.
to this baby. And I've never been with a baby before. And I'm not a fan of babies. Like I'm a fan of Jack now because we like run around and we have fun and we joke, but he had colic. He was up all night screaming and crying. And I was like, well, I didn't sign up for this.
Right.
And it was crazy. And I didn't feel like I had a lot of support, which I did, when you feel like it, but I just didn't feel like I got the support from where I wanted to get the support from. I was getting it from other places. And I was just angry and unhappy, and I was looking for a reason. I remember talking to my friends and my husband saying, I never really had a problem with alcohol. It was really just drugs.
Wow.
It was really just drugs. And I started to really believe it.
Yeah.
And one night, my husband and I got into an epic argument, epic fight. I thought it was the end of us. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm leaving. And I left. And I got in my car and I drove to the liquor store and I bought the cheapest bottle of vodka I could find. I don't know why I had to get bad vodka.
Right.
I should have gotten Kettle One or something, but I bought the cheapest vodka and I drove from the liquor store to my sister's house. And that was like 5 minutes. And I practically drank the whole bottle. It was a big bottle. It wasn't a huge bottle, but it was a big bottle. And I was on medicine I was taking Klonopin for my anxiety at that point. And I blacked out. Within like 10 minutes, I blacked out. By the time I got to my sister's house, it was...
And you were driving?
I was driving.
Oh, my God.
5 minutes. 5-minute ride. it was always my sister who saved me too. So I was driving in my sister's and I showed up. My niece was like, she calls me Aunt Lala. She's like, oh, Aunt Lala has a special drink. I was like, oh my God. It was crazy.
Horrible.
Say my sister was pregnant with her other daughter and she ended up taking me. Her husband's in AA too. So he was like, he got us a hotel down the road. He's like, just take Lauren to the hotel. And got to the hotel, and me being the typical person that I am, I mean, your disease takes off where you left off.
Yep.
I was screaming in the lobby, where's the bar? Where's this? Where's that? I was like trying to find drugs. I was trying to do whatever I possibly could. My sister was trying to contain me. We went upstairs to the hotel room and I blacked out. She called 911. No, not 911. An ambulance was called and then the cops came. That was pretty shitty. And I was angry for a while that she called them on there because they took me to the hospital and they had me handcuffed to a bed.
Oh my God.
And I woke up with my pregnant sister sitting next to me. I get crazy when I drink. I just start everything was out the window. It was like all the years of sobriety I had were gone.
Right.
It just was crazy. And I remember opening my eyes and seeing my sister's face and thinking to myself, what is going on with me? Like, I just didn't want to be around anymore. It got to that point again. It was that bottom again that I had before.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was worth it. I was constantly hurting my family, my sister, my poor sister, who's such a goody two shoes. The look of concern, my parents, oh my God, you're in the hospital again. Like when they got the call in high school, oh my God, you got arrested again. Like things like that. It was like stupid stuff that I didn't think through. I had an infant and I was in the hospital and I was away from my child and I didn't even drink after that, but I was popping pills because I was in the hospital and I didn't care at that point. They were giving me Xanax. They were giving me Klonopin. They were giving me everything I could possibly take to keep me calm because I was not calm anymore. So I was a mess. And I ended up deciding that I needed to take care of myself because of Jackson. Like it wasn't about me anymore.
Right.
It wasn't about like if I killed myself, it's about my family.
Yes.
It's about Michael. It's about my son. Suicide is like a legacy. It goes through generations, It takes out generations. And I know people that have had suicide in the family. And I did a number on my family. It's a family disease. I did a number on my family. I was really, I put them through a lot. The past 10 years, most of them were good. I had one bad year, but my journey back this time around, I've changed so much spiritually. I've become like a different person. I ended up coming back to AA the next day because everyone was like, my husband was like, you have to go to AA. My parents were saying that. So I went to AA and I was like, I relapsed and I don't give a shit. And you guys can say whatever you want. I remember raising my hand and saying, I don't want to hear anything from anyone in this room. Do not come up to me after. And everyone was just like, whoa, because they've known me forever.
Right.
That's just a little glimpse into me being Angry Lauren before I got sober. But that was my nickname, Angry Lauren. When I got out of rehab 10 years ago. But
Can we use that as the name for your show? Angry Lauren.
No,
Okay,
no.
sorry. No. Okay.
No.
I'm all about the drama, Lauren. I'm all about the drama. I was like, ooh, what a great name. Angry Lauren.
Oh my God. I still have anger. You can do whatever you want, but I definitely better than intense. I hate that word. It is funny.
It's funny.
Yeah. There was plenty of angry people at the group, but when I came back and I remember thinking all those people that relapsed and kept coming back and relapsing and coming back. And I thought about them and the people running the meeting would be like, what are you going to do different this time?
Yeah.
A lot of them didn't do anything different. And I did everything different. I changed my home group. I changed my sponsor. I started going to big book meetings. I mean, I never read the big book. Reading the big book to me with my learning disability was like, oh, I don't understand it, so I'm not even bothering.
Right.
It was like I did the steps and I did what I was supposed to. I didn't read the big book. The big book, Friday nights, I go to a big book meeting. I've been running it for a while. It changed my recovery because it gives you an idea of how you're supposed to live your life. And the fact that this isn't your fault. You have a disease. Like that guy Usman said, my disease spoke to me in my voice. That was amazing when I heard that because that's exactly the truth. This time around, I've changed everything and I started reading the big book and I got honest with myself. And that was my biggest thing, lying to myself. I could be honest with people about anything you want. but I couldn't be honest about me and my feelings and who I was as a person. I just couldn't do it. And I did this fourth step this time that was so brutally honest. It was the first time I did my fourth step. It was like, oh, I did this and this. And I was writing like a bibliography about like the stories of Lauren and all the fun things I did and who I hooked up with and things like that. And it just wasn't, it didn't, it served the purpose for a while. But this time around I was older and I was more damaged and I needed to work on myself. I had a child now and I needed to change. And I ended up doing a 4-step with my amazing sponsor, who is luckily, I'm so lucky. She's a life coach and she is so positive and spiritual and not in a hippity dippity way that drives me crazy. Like she really genuinely cares about me and what I have to say. She remembers things that I say. I can call her and say one word and she knows what's going on because my 4-step was so honest. I don't have to go back and be like, remember when I told you this, this, and that? She'll be like, oh, this is why you're doing it. The sponsor to me is my lifeline. It is my lifeline. I have a higher power now, which I choose to call God, but it's also my program. It's like I got an instruction manual on how to be an adult and how to live a life. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I wasn't a grown-up until a few years ago. Now I know how to do the next right thing. It's not easy, and I don't do it every day and all the time, but I know that putting one foot in front of the other, I will come out the other side because I've been through hell and back. And I know that the struggles I had with my depression and now with my postpartum depression, I have actually started a group for women with postpartum depression. I run a support group and I've been helping women. And, it's my passion. It's to help other people. I didn't give a shit about other people before.
Right.
If you didn't like me, oh, well, that didn't matter to me. Now I really care about other people and I love other people and I want to help them. I have a sponsee who is awesome because she has this intense history of depression that I can relate to and this intense, like crazy drugs and alcohol and guys and everything in the background, a long time ago. My story was crazy. I didn't feel like needing to say all those things because I'm sure other people are going to listen to this that might know me. So I chose to leave some things out. But this time around, I know how to use the steps in conjunction with praying and going to meetings and working with my sponsor and my sponsee. Like I do the whole program now.
Right.
And in the big book, they talk about a psychic change that's spiritual, emotional, and physical, all three. And I don't know if I'm saying the right thing, but all three of those things had happened to me and I had a psychic change. And it took 10 years for that to happen. I have a choice now. I never had a choice before. And I choose to stay far away from people, places, and things that would trigger me into using, such as going to clubs, going to bars. I have no business being in a bar or being in a club because, I did that and I lost my privileges. I did as much as I possibly could in a short period of time. It was like 20 years of my using and drinking and causing havoc. And I just feel like, I got my shot and it's over. But, my life is different now. I have a quieter life. And sometimes it's difficult for me because I like to be in the drama. I like to be running around. I love music. My life is music. I listen to music. I dance all the time. It's like this passion I have. And Jackson has it too now. So we listen to music all day long, blasting music and dancing and singing together. It's so much fun. And at the beginning, I couldn't even listen to a Bob Marley song because it triggered me into wanting to smoke pot.
Right.
It was crazy. I couldn't listen to things. I couldn't go out. I couldn't do this. I thought my life was over. My life was over in that aspect. And I'm so happy it was because now I feel like I'm an adult now. Now I feel like I'm actually an adult. I never felt like an adult before. I'm 40 years old. I just had my 40th birthday and I feel better than I ever did. And I'm hesitant to say these things because I know how things change so quickly and how the disease speaks to you. But right now, today, I'm doing really well and an awesome day. I got to spend the whole day with my son and my family. I love my family. I hang out with them all the time. I couldn't stand them before. They were wet blankets. Everyone was like crashing my high and bringing me down and things like that. And now it's like I want to spend all my time with my parents. I love my parents, love my sister. I have a million friends that I'm still friends with from the time I was like in elementary school through college, in AA. My life is different. It has meaning. I don't know. I think that's my story.
Well, that's an amazing story, Lauren. I think in our own minds, we have an idea of what our story sounds like to us. But the important thing is how our story sounds to others. And there's so many takeaways from your story that I could resonate with, that I know that other women are going to be able to resonate with, that parents can resonate with. I mean, we need to hear these stories. We need to hear your story and how you've coped over the years. But at the end of the day, the best part of your story is finding God, finding that spirituality, finding the program, and working the steps. That's your whole, that's the instruction manual right there for living.
It is. It is. And I was thinking it's really funny you said that, because when I had postpartum depression, which I had no idea, it wasn't really depression for me. It was anxiety. Like I would hear him crying because he had colic, and I would turn like freezing cold, sweating, and like pass out. It was insane. It was insane. And I was at the bank the other day and I heard this baby crying and I got chills all over my body. And I was like, oh my God, I'm never having another baby again.
Yeah. For some of us, it's traumatic.
So I have Michael and I wanted to have like 4 kids.
Oh my God.
Kids.
Oh.
And now I have 1 and I'm set. I'm like, I definitely wish that I could have more, but I can't. And I have to be okay with that. My life is about acceptance now. Acceptance is the answer to all my questions. To all my problems. And I have to remind myself that a lot.
What I need to be honest with is myself. I always need to be honest with me. I need to accept who I am, what I want and what I don't want.
Right.
And coming into this program, I personally got to a point where I said, you know what? I can be whoever I want to be. I can do whatever I want to do. I can go wherever I want to go. And if I want to get married, I'll get married. If I don't want to get married, I won't get married. If I want to have kids, I'll have more kids. If I don't want to have more kids, and I don't have to be socially acceptable. I have to be acceptable.
Right.
I have to be happy in my life.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to be convinced.
I love that you just said that.
Yeah, I don't want to be convinced of anything. Hey, you know what? You should have more kids. And you know what? You should,
that happens every day.
Well, you should keep your mouth shut. As far as I'm concerned, and there's a polite way of saying it, but for the most part, it's just about, like you say, this is who I am today. This is what's important to me. My family is important to me. My sisters are important to me. Now, my son, my husband, that's what's important to me. And I'm going to focus my energy in that. I don't need to add anything else in. I'm complete.
Right. I have 1 sister, by the way. 1.
Oh, you have 1 sister.
I thought you said sisters.
I wasn't sure. So
yeah, no, just 1. The Holy Spirit, the Holy Child.
The perfect...
I used to call her motherfucking Teresa. Yep. Who the fuck do you think you are, motherfucking Teresa? You got the G-rated version out.
I was kind of hoping I was going to get the X-rated version.
Nope.
No, but that's okay. That's okay. It's who you are today. That's not
right.
That person, like you said, that it's hard to identify with the person that it's
like I'm telling a story of someone else. It's so bizarre. But what you were saying about how when people ask you questions, it's not your responsibility anymore to talk them into thinking, well, no, this is how it's supposed to be. And why don't you understand that? Like when people don't understand why I don't drink, it's none of their business. And it's really not my responsibility to explain to them. So if I go somewhere and everyone is drinking wine and I'm drinking water, it doesn't bother me anymore, because you know what? I hate wine. It took too long to get drunk and it tasted like crap. It wasn't for me. And people get uncomfortable around that, but it's not right now. I'm in the place where that's cool. I don't have to talk you into thinking any way you don't want to think. If you want to drink and you don't have a problem, go for it. I don't care if you drink, it doesn't bother me because I know who I am. And I know the way you said it before totally triggered something in me by saying, it's not my responsibility to make other people feel or see things the way that I do.
Correct.
It used to be this huge conviction of mine. Like, no, you have to see it this way. And I'm right and you're wrong. And now it's like, whatever. Okay. I say okay now whenever Michael and I get into a fight. I just say, okay, whatever. Because he's going to feel one way and I'm going to feel another. And the main goal is to move forward, to accept what it is and move forward.
And this program helps you find yourself. It actually helps you disconnect from all the character defects that once were our whole construct. And now we can actually look at all of our character assets, which is something very difficult for us to do when we first come in because we're so screwed up that all we can see is the negative.
Right.
But once we're able to actually allocate and look at all of our character assets and go, wow, I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that. And this is who I am and this is who I want to be. And I'm no longer concerned with being liked by other people or being accepted by other people because I love myself. I accept myself. I embrace who I am. Mm-hmm. And the people that are like the real people in my life, they're going to accept me for who I am too. The people that don't, well, that they've already made it very simple for me to disconnect myself from those people.
Right.
It's very simple. Very simple.
It is very simple. Exactly how I feel. And it took I would say 9 years for me to get here. And like I said, it takes everyone, it takes a struggle, it takes their struggle, or everyone has their own path. And mine involved my relapse. That brought me to a whole new level of understanding and acceptance.
So when's your anniversary date then?
This time, and the funny thing is, it wasn't even when I drank. I took one extra pill of my medication and I told my sponsor because I knew it wasn't right. And I didn't want to my whole thing right now is all about honesty and not lying.
Of course.
So my new date, my first one was January 9th of 2005. And this one is August 14th of 2012.
Got it.
And it was so funny because it was like, I take medication for my mood disorder and I took an extra one because it makes you tired. So my motive was off.
Right. It's all about the motives. It's all about the motives.
My sponsor was like, you should really change it. And I'm like, totally, let's do it. I'm like, at that point, I was all excited that I had a new date. I was so hung up on that stupid date. Like, it's the most important thing in the world.
I think how you're feeling today is the most important thing in the world.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Just for today.
Just for today. AA has taught me how to accept others, accept myself, and learn how to live this life with other people. It's like a manual.
The instruction manual. We could also call it that. I like that. The instruction manual.
Perfect.
Okay, done. That's what it's going to be.
It's better than Angry Lauren.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. See, we're wrapping up strong here. So let's go ahead and let's answer some questions for the newcomer.
Cool.
So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and you're going to respond with inspiring and insightful answers you can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So, Lauren, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I think that I was keeping myself from getting clean. I didn't want to admit that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol. I really thought it was all my depression. It was all my depression or my mood disorder or whatever you want to call it. It had nothing to do with the drugs and alcohol that were keeping me down. And I think that the first 2 months, luckily, I was in a rehab, because if I wasn't in a rehab, there's no way I would have gotten sober. These women in the rehab got me through those tough times and taught me how, yes, you have a problem. If you have to do cocaine all the time, that's a problem. If you're not eating food, that's a problem. My disease is in a million different, it rears its ugly head in a million different ways. But I think that was the biggest thing that was keeping me from getting clean, is that I could not admit. I never was the person that was like, oh, I'm not going to use tomorrow, because I didn't think it was a problem.
Denial.
It was like,
wow. Huge denial.
Huge denial.
Beautiful. All right. So number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
It was the last day of rehab, and I was writing in my journal. I was big into journaling at that point, which I highly recommend when you can't talk to other people. And I remember writing the last entry and feeling as though I came 180, like into a full circle. And I was thinking that, wow, like I haven't done drugs and alcohol and I feel great. Like I feel fantastic. I'm able to get out of bed. I'm not sleeping all day. I'm not crying randomly. I'm not screaming at people. And I realized that because the drugs and alcohol were gone, like I was the first time I realized because the drugs and alcohol were no longer in my life that I was able to recover. I was able to be the person that I wanted to be. I had a shot.
Awesome.
Just a quick question.
Shoot.
Did I say 180 and it was supposed to be 360?
I always confuse those. I always wonder, do I say complete 360 or say 180? Because 180 is in the opposite direction.
Oh, great. I'm going to Google it.
No, I think it works.
It's a Laurenism anyway.
Just so you know, I've done that too.
Yeah.
But your answer was beautiful. That's a perfect answer. Let's roll with that one.
All right, cool.
All right. So, do you have a favorite book you would recommend to our listeners?
Right now, my favorite book is The Big Book because it is an instruction manual on how to live my life. You know, because of all these other people who have gone through the same experiences that I did, and they have come out the other end. At the beginning, it was just too much for me to comprehend. I was so hung up on the word God and the big book. And it was just like the whole thing was so intense to me. I hated school. So, I mean, when I graduated from college, I was like, I'm never going to school again. It was a struggle for me. And having to read this I was thinking to myself, are they kidding me? I'm not going to read this book. It's like and the doctor's opinion, which now is like the most incredible chapter ever, is revolutionary to, I think, newcomers to read it. I couldn't do it. I was like, who are they talking about in this weird text? I couldn't even understand the language. I think that The Big Book is amazing. I think that it has all the answers in it. People have been doing it for 80 something or more than 80 years, right?
Yep.
Experience is the best. I think experience teaches me a lot. But at the beginning, living sober, it's just, I don't know which one you want to answer, but living sober, it just tells you how to handle situations.
In many of the episodes, the Living Sober book and the Big Book are the ones that are the highest recommended because the Living Sober book is the easiest to digest. The Big Book's big.
I remember in early recovery, I read Living Sober because I could read a few sentences and put it down. Right. I just couldn't do anything at the beginning. My brain was no longer my brain. And my body was, it was like I wasn't myself. And I remember thinking my best friend to this day, my best friend from college was getting married and I was in the bridal party. I was 5 months sober. And I don't recommend that for anyone. I just don't recommend it. And I talked to my sponsor and we came up with a plan. I was going to bookend this wedding. Bookending meaning I'm going to call her before, I'm going to call her after, and in between, if I need her, I'm going to call, I'll do whatever I can to get through it. But bookending is the most important thing. And I still recommend that to newcomers.
And so what you're saying is you don't recommend being a bridesmaid 5 months into recovery?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And it was very difficult, but thank God I was 5 months sober. I was like, hey, this is great. I just met Michael. I was feeling really good about myself, so that was good. But bookending, it was really important because I was hanging out at the wedding with all my friends who used, and they're fine now, by the way. They could still go out and use and have fun.
That's actually part of the next two questions. I don't know if you want to use that one. The number 4 question is, what is the best suggestion you've ever received? I think you just used it.
Well, no, because there's a lot of amazing suggestions.
Well, you can name a couple.
I love, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said now? And does this need to be said by you?
Yep.
Holy crap.
That's a wonderful one.
Because no, most of the time it does not need to be said by me, and it does not need to be said right now.
Sometimes it doesn't need to be said at all.
Ever. I was a big typing everything and writing things and then hitting send. And like, that's bad. Now I try not to do anything. I try to just sit with it. Oh my God, it's painful. The stuff that comes in my head because I'm an alcoholic. I mean, it doesn't go away. I still have the crazy thinking. But I think maybe the best suggestion don't think, don't drink, and go to meetings. That was the best at the beginning. I try to tell that because a lot of people come in and, oh, what does God mean? And what is this? And they try to like complicate it. And really, all you have to do is put the drink down. Don't drink no matter what happens. If your ass falls off, pick it up and go to a meeting. I'm sure you've heard that saying.
Oh my God. Everything you've just said. In the beginning, my sponsor used to tell me all the time, does it need to be said by you? What was it? Do not be quick to pen and tongue?
Restraint of pen and tongue.
That's it.
I'm getting a softer message nowadays, but in the beginning, it was like, you have a problem, you want to drink, then go out and do some more research. And I love that. I thought that was awesome. Some people were like, oh my God, that's horrible. I thought it was great. If you have a problem and no, we're not going to sit here and talk you into thinking you're a drug addict and an alcoholic. Go out and do some more research.
I come from that same tough love school.
I love it. There's too many.
There is. But okay, well, let's close up with this. Pick one. If you could give our listeners only one suggestion, what would it be?
To get a sponsor and to get involved in a home group and to do service. Because when you do service and when you raise your hand in a meeting, people get to know you and become interested in you and they want to care about you. And then that's how your recovery starts. I think
Perfect.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. Great suggestions, Lauren.
I did want to say one other thing and then I'm done.
Bring it.
I don't know where you're going to throw this in, but do you guys talk about the promises?
We haven't, but you can talk about them.
But do you talk about them over there?
Well, we read them at the close of every meeting.
Right. So the promises, like it was all for me about like getting my husband, getting this, getting that, but like that didn't matter. The promise that got me, and to this day is the best promise, is intuitively knowing how to handle situations that used to baffle me. That is it for me. That is the most incredible thing that I got out of this program.
Well, I remember that for me as well, there was so many times in my life where I felt so lost. And it wasn't just about one thing. It wasn't about one time in my life. It was year after year. Things would present themselves and I would not know what to do. And when I came into the program and I remember that being part of the promises, I go, oh man, I can't wait till that happens for me. And when it started, for me, it was another one of my huge aha moments and spiritual awakenings. I'm like, wow, this program, it just keeps delivering and keeps delivering. All the promises have come true, and they've come true for me. There's no question about it. I love it. Great suggestions, Lauren. We have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say in Costa Rica, pura vida.
All right. Pura vida, oh.
Perfect. I love it.
Ay, ay.
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.